This is the story of LEO, the Landscape Evolution Observatory. Constructed at the Biosphere 2 facility by the University of Arizona College of Science, LEO is the biggest earth science experiment ever built. The project consists of 3 massive hill slopes that mimic watersheds in the natural world. The slopes will replicate conditions in the natural world, yet they will provide a density of real-time data that could never be achieved in the field. Also, scientists will be able to control conditions on the slopes for research purposes, a crucial ability that would be impossible in the natural world. Indeed, LEO will enable Earth scientists to understand the complex interplay between soil, water, energy, and carbon like never before. It will provide crucial knowledge that will help us face complex and interconnected global challenges in the century ahead, from water to energy to climate. When the University of Arizona took over management of Biosphere 2 in 2007, they knew that the facility offered amazing research potential. But how could they capture that potential? What direction should they take? With so many different habitats in the Biosphere 2 facility, habitats called biomes, like the rainforest biome, the ocean biome, and the desert biome, how could scientists best use the space for innovative research? First, they knew that any big research project needed to be interdisciplinary, so that it was not about just one field of scientific research, but instead brought together expertise from many different areas of science. In earth science, much of the best research being done today is interdisciplinary, science that brings together a team of researchers with different areas of scientific expertise so they can begin to understand how complex Earth systems interact and influence each other. The more we know about how different parts of Earth science work, the more we understand that all those parts are deeply interconnected. Geology, hydrology, biology, ecology, geochemistry, and climate all weave together. So scientists have realized that in order to really understand the details, we have to understand the big picture, the dynamic interactions. So when the UA science team at Biosphere 2, led by founding director Travis Huxman, was looking for the right project, they wanted something that would take advantage of an interdisciplinary approach, something that would take advantage of the amazing Biosphere 2 facility, and something big that would bring lots of new knowledge. They realized that the old agriculture biome, the space where the original biospherians grew their food, could be used for something big. Essentially an immense greenhouse, the agriculture biome offered enough space for a large-scale earth science experiment. In the world of science, many large, complex instruments have been created to answer big questions about how our world, or our universe, works. Astronomers have telescopes. Physicists have the Large Hadron Collider. The science team at Biosphere 2 wanted to create something on that scale that would advance Earth science. They began to talk about the idea of landscape evolution, the way our land forms and how it supports life. When we look around us at our beautiful southern Arizona landscape of mountains and valley basins, we don't often think about how the shape of that land formed over many millions of years. But scientists have been trying to figure out how Earth systems formed and shaped the land for more than a century. In that time, we've learned so much about the forces that shape the land, from plate tectonics to water to climate. We already know about many of the forces that shape the land, like how water breaks down rock into gravel and sand, and how water and life help turn rock particles into soil, and how soil and plants store water. But while scientists have been investigating the different parts, we don't yet have a solid understanding of how all the parts work together as systems to form the big picture. And that is why the team came up with the idea for the Landscape Evolution Observatory, LEO. In the tradition of Biosphere 2, LEO was a big, bold vision, an instrument for earth science that could map the complex dynamics of how water, energy, and carbon dynamically interact to form the land and soil that enables life on Earth. With the vision for LEO, the UA science team won the support of environmental philanthropist Ed Bass. Bass and his Philecology Foundation would help fund the LEO project. When the Biosphere 2 facility was originally built, Bass provided most of the funding. LEO was an opportunity to continue the legacy of large-scale innovation and groundbreaking scientific research at Biosphere 2. Now the team had to figure out how to make the vision a reality. Like the original construction of Biosphere 2, LEO was something that had never been done before, an inspiration and a challenge. To begin the complex planning and design process, and to make sure that LEO would deliver the best possible Earth science data, the UA science team organized workshops with scientists from other universities to participate in the vision, planning, and design. Those interdisciplinary meetings and workshops generated 3 peer-reviewed papers to guide the creation of LEO. 1 paper focused on hydrology, 1 focused on geochemistry, and 1 focused on the dynamic between hydrology and ecology. Guided by the priorities formulated in the collaborative visioning process, the Biosphere 2 science team shaped a plan. The project would include 3 identical hill slopes, each at a 10-degree angle. By creating 3 identical slopes, the scientists would make sure that the data generated was consistent and that the results could be replicated to deliver solid scientific knowledge. Each slope tray would be filled with soil 1 meter deep, roughly 3 feet, and the soil in each slope would be monitored by a dense sensor array using the most innovative sensor technology available. With the plan defined, Biosphere 2 hired M3 Engineering in Tucson to turn the concept into a physical design. Fortunately, M3 engineers had worked on large-scale science projects before, such as the telescope enclosure for the Large Binocular Telescope on Mount Graham here in Arizona. The mirrors for the Large Binocular Telescope were manufactured by the UA Mirror Lab. M3 architects and engineers went to work to turn the big idea into a reality in late 2009. Like the design of the original Biosphere 2 facility, there was no precedent. The engineers had to figure out how to fit the immense slopes into the enclosed space.
One of the many unusual things about this particular project is the existing facility. There's a tremendous weight of steel there, and we're actually not on the ground floor.
We had to look at each component that we were going to use, not only from the mechanical properties, but also the chemical properties.
Whether it's a paint coating or the waterproofing membrane or even the steel, for instance, we did not use galvanized steel anywhere because of the zinc process and that. It tends to, over time, give off very minimal off-gassing of some kind, but it's the kind of element that they didn't want introduced into the science.
With M3 working on the physical design, the Biosphere 2 team turned its attention to the science and the data that would be drawn from the LEO hill slopes. In March 2010, they hired geoscientist Steve DeLong as the lead scientist for LEO. DeLong would play a vital role as the liaison between the science team, the engineering team, and the construction contractors. He also served as the final decision-maker during the design and construction process. Soon, Lloyd Construction Company was hired to manage all the contractors and phases of construction. The UA Department of Planning, Design, and Construction organized weekly meetings between representatives from M3 Engineering, Lloyd Construction, and the Biosphere 2 team, including Assistant Director John Adams and lead scientist DeLong. This is the team that brought together the many areas of expertise, the science, the engineering, the construction, the facility knowledge, the technological experience needed to realize a project of this scale and complexity. In December 2010, Biosphere 2 hired engineer Michael Sibayan to work exclusively on LEO, and in particular to help design and implement the dense and complex web of sensors that monitor a multitude of variables from water to temperature to chemistry in each hill slope. Sibayan not only had responsibility for the sensors themselves, he also had to design and program the computer network that will monitor and record the incredible volume of data coming off the LEO hill slopes. As the planning process moved forward, DeLong turned his attention to the sensors and the soil. To ensure the success of LEO, the best possible array of sensors had to be identified, rigorously tested, and sometimes custom designed and fabricated. Choosing the right rock and particle size for the soil would also be crucial for the hydrological and geochemical evolution of the experiment. A small steel model hill slope was built to test the soil and some of the sensors. At the same time, DeLong and the science team worked with Biosphere 2 researcher Greg Barron-Gafford, a plant ecologist, to test both the soil and some of the sensors in a real-world carbon and water flux experiment nicknamed the Blue Barrel Experiment.
Coordinating with a lot of different groups is a little unusual. Typically, we're getting better at it, but usually the hydrologists overlap with us a little bit as ecologists. The ecologists dabble in the hydrology. The biochemists kind of try to help us tie it together. But for this experiment, we're intentionally bringing the whole group together, going through those challenges of co-locating our sensors.
The Blue Barrel Experiment delivered valuable knowledge for Leo. In particular, the carbon dioxide sensors that monitored CO2, sensors that had been used for years in field experiments, failed when submerged in water-saturated soil over longer periods of time. So the Leo team worked with the manufacturer to modify the sensors and make them more durable in both wet and dry conditions. The team's search for the right rock for the Leo soil eventually led to Millar mining outside of Flagstaff, Arizona, where a deposit of volcanic tephra would provide an initial Leo soil with very low organic content. This particular tephra, lava that cooled into rock as it fell through the air during a volcanic eruption, would produce a pristine soil with a mineralogical composition that would chemically weather when exposed to water and plants, so that researchers could observe and quantify the hydrologic and geomorphologic processes involved in soil formation. Meanwhile, Lloyd Construction contracted with Parsons Steel, the best steel fabricator and builder in Tucson, to manufacture and install the massive steel frames for the Leo hillslopes. Finally, in late summer 2011, construction began. Everyone involved, from the science team to the engineers to the construction crew, knew that building Leo in the former agriculture biome at Biosphere 2 would be like building a ship in a bottle. Everything had to enter the space through one relatively small access door, and once inside, traditional construction techniques like giant overhead cranes could not be used. When Parsons Steel fabricated the massive columns and beams in their shop, they also fabricated a custom trailer to transport the steel through the entrance to the Leo space. The engineers mapped the floor to make sure that the steel columns for the hillslopes would be placed exactly above the columns in the basement to transfer the incredible weight of the slopes directly to the underlying slab. Parsons Steel and Lloyd Construction located the only crane in Arizona that was both strong enough to lift the huge steel members and small enough to work in the constrained space. Massive steel bolts were secured in the concrete floor by the steel erector crew to anchor the columns. At last, it was time to hang steel. The first column for the first Leo hillslope went up on October 25, 2011. Soon after that, the first steel box structure took shape, and on top of the box structure, the crew attached the massive steel wings that would support the slope tray.
Generally speaking, when we build a steel structure, it's outside. And we don't have the physical constraints and space constraints that we have inside the Leo space here. We are literally building a ship in a bottle, and not just one, but three of them. It's very, very tight. It has some very unique opportunities for us, and quite frankly, it's very difficult. But we're working with Parsons Steel Erectors out of Tucson. They've done an excellent job of pre-planning along with the folks from B2 and my company. And we're very fortunate that we have them on the job. We have a great superintendent on the job from Parsons Steel. And we're putting the pieces and parts together in our heads before we actually got to the job site. It's made a tremendous difference, and things are going very, very well for us right now. In the tray behind me, or the hillside slope that's behind me that's under construction right now, there are 3,500 pieces of steel and approximately 4,000 bolts. We have a great team, and this project has been 2 years in the planning between the engineering company, between the general contractor, and the researchers that are doing this. And all this has to be coordinated with the folks here at B2.
The Parsons Steel team then used rib steel decking to line the tray. It was hard, slippery work. After the steel decking came the hardy backer cement board.
You can see the cement board's been laid down and there's all these penetrations across the slope in sort of an irregular grid. And what these are, there's basically two different things going on. There's a fairly regularly spaced grid of penetrations, which are simply plastic tubing with a flange on the top. And through those tubing locations, and it's in a grid of 11 by 14, we're going to have a series of cables and sampler tubes. So these are sensor cables that carry, electronic signals, data through from a sensor head that'll be buried in the soil to our computer system. And there's also sampler tubes. These are tubes that carry gas that we can pump out from within the soil, and tubes that carry water that we can pump out from within the soil. For example, there'll be 496 individual water samplers, 496 individual soil water content sensors, 496 individual soil water potential sensors, and these, along with a lot of other sensors, are all going to go through these penetrations. One thing you might wonder is how we're going to make this watertight. We've built this nice form and then drilled all these holes in it. After we get the sensor bundles in, we're going to add an expanding foam material and then sort of a pourable urethane sealant, and that should seal around the cables, seal around the sensor or the sampler tubes, and create a watertight system.
Before the LEO team adds soil to the tray, they scan the slope with a laser.
So this is our Leica 3D LiDAR laser scanner. We use this instrument a lot of times in the field of geomorphology for measuring things such as river erosion and landscape change over time. So what it does is it sends out a laser pulse and measures the time it takes for that laser pulse to get back to the machine. And right now we're using it in the Landscape Evolution Observatory project, or LEO, mostly to get the geometry of the structure itself. So as you can see behind you, it's already built, but we want to get an idea of the volume of the inside of the structure so we know exactly how much soil we're putting in there.
With the sensors installed and the whole tray watertight and laser scanned, the team was at long last ready for the pristine LEO soil to hit the deck. Steve DeLong poured the first bucket of coarse tephra rock into the first slope on February 1st, 2012. The coarse rock filled the bottom of the slope for drainage purposes. Then came the soil, rock ground to a particle size that had been tested for LEO specifications. The soil was delivered by a custom-built conveyor belt.
Today's a big day here at the LEO project. It's our first day. We're really moving a lot of the soil material onto the first landscape. We've got lots of guys here with shovels and wheelbarrows, and there's a few challenges that we're dealing with. One is the sensors. You can see all the bundles of sensors that are sort of scattered around, and these guys have to be careful not to damage them. And then on our end at Biosphere 2, our staff has to make sure the sensors all get placed in exactly the right position in X, Y, and Z. So they, we place them once and they're going to be there for a long time. The other thing that we're doing here is not only spreading the soil to the right depth, but we're compacting it. And the reason we do that is so it's really nice and even, and we have really predictable movement of water through the system. We need it compacted to our specifications that we figured out in some earlier experiments.
So right now we're installing the sensors in the first LEO hill slope. You can see these pieces of tape on our aluminum rod right here. Each one of these represents a different depth. Our deepest sensors are at 85 centimeters from the top of the soil. So that's what we're doing right now.
Once the soil had been installed in the first slope, the focus turned to the installation of the personnel transporter. After an extensive search, the LEO team found a company, Tractel Limited, Swingstage Division, from Canada, that could design and build the custom transport system required for the hill slopes. The transporter needed to bring researchers to any point on the slope without disturbing the soil or disrupting the experiment, an engineering challenge by any measure. Tractel engineer Kamay Matharu met that challenge.
Yeah, this project, when it got introduced to us, we were given the parameters that we had to work with. The idea of having this transporter was to cover the full tank surface and be able to reach from one end to the other. So we had to come up with a solution where we had to fit a transporter inside the envelope, above the tank, and make sure that it would be able to cover the full surface area of the tank. Unlike the standard gantries, we had to kind of design a gantry to kind of tailor fit inside this and make it even more presentable, workable and functionable. And so all those difficulties were brought up, and we had to kind of take one at a time and conquer one at a time.
With the major construction of the first hill slope completed, Parsons Steel immediately began work on the second slope. At the same time, Leo engineer Michael Sibayan went to work connecting all the cables to the data loggers and the computer network. The Leo computer network will collect a constant stream of digital data that will map water, energy, and chemistry over space and time. Thanks to the excellent slope design from N3 Engineering and the experience that the Parsons Steel crew had gained from the first slope, the second and third slopes went up quickly. However, installing the load cells, the specialized scales developed with Honeywell that sit atop the columns of each slope, took some trial and error. One of the breakthrough opportunities provided by the Leo hill slopes will be their ability to precisely balance the water budget in each slope thanks to the precision load cells.
Jim Frye, Parsons Steel, been working as a union iron worker for 33 years. Foreman, working at the Biosphere. But what we come in is we have some rigging to help take out the dummy cell. Insert that first. We put the jacking bolts in. That'll help support the weight when we start lifting, and it also acts as a safety in case we have a failure in one of the jacks. After those are installed, we put the jacks in place. We raise the structure with our jacks. We tighten up the nuts on the jacking bolts to help hold and support the weight. Once we have that done, then we remove the temporary load cell. We remove that, send it to the ground. We bring it back up, the new load cell, the one that's been pre-assembled, and we slide it back into place, and the process is just reversed.
The last big hurdle was the rain system, a network of sprinklers custom designed by Biosphere 2 in collaboration with M3 Engineering. Installed by irrigation experts the groundskeeper, the system will provide rainfall ranging from a light mist to a heavy downpour. 5 plumbing circuits and 66 sprinkler heads serve each slope, and the system is entirely computer controlled so that researchers can simulate a variety of rainstorm intensities as they precisely monitor the volume and pattern of rainfall for a detailed and complete water budget. As the Leo project begins operation, researchers will closely monitor the hydrology as water moves through the ground-up rock. Chemical weathering will lead to soil formation. Microbial life will develop and further alter the landscape, just as it has for millennia in the natural world. Once we have a baseline understanding, thanks to our 3-dimensional maps of the hydrologic cycle, plants will be added to the hill slopes. Vegetation will add new and greater complexity to the slope evolution process, generating new interactions to be studied and providing new data to expand our comprehension about how our world works. Managed by the interdisciplinary science team, the data that streams from Leo will be rapidly incorporated into computer models that predict how Earth systems operate and how they will change as environmental conditions shift. These models, improved by iterative measurements from Leo and within the model design, will provide a vital tool for making decisions about environmental policy, decisions that will impact generations to come. Furthermore, Leo will serve as a community resource for Earth system science research, education, and outreach. The Leo science team has already established meaningful collaborations with researchers from around the world. Leo's operational philosophy encourages this collaborative, interdisciplinary, open-source approach to science. Taken together, the technical capabilities at Leo, the interdisciplinary science plan, and the community-oriented philosophy will allow the Leo science team to gain new understanding of the fate of our rich and complex landscapes. In a time of rapidly changing climate, disruptive land use, and population growth, LEO will inspire new collaborations, train young scientists, and spin off ambitious new field experiments and modeling projects. Biosphere 2 and LEO will serve as a nexus for Earth scientists from many areas of expertise to come together and learn about the amazing processes taking place in the life-sustaining soils and watersheds of our very own planet Earth.